Off the ball. This is News Talk.
Now, you're very welcome back. Joe Molloy with you this evening. Dave McIntyre is still here. Hello.
Hi, Joe.
And Kieran Cunningham joins us as well, chief sports writer with the Irish Daily Star. Hello.
Hi, Joe. Hi, Dave.
Now, you join us at an interesting point, Kieran, because Dave McIntyre, Richie McCormack were bemoaning the GAA Championship. Dave admittedly picked out a couple of games which were pretty thrilling. We got you to pick three highlights here, one lowlight. We'll try and get through as many as we can. COVID was not allowed to be picked as your lowlight. So at number 3, you've got some men's Gaelic football in for us in your highlight section, obviously.
Yeah, and that's I picked the All-Ireland football semi-finals, the extra time wins for Tyrone over Kerry and Mayo over Dublin. And it's because this won't happen very often, Joe, that, you know, we have finals, All-Ireland final without Dublin and Kerry. You know, they are going to dominate, as they have for most of the time of the history of the GAA. And what the structures they have in place now and the personnel they have in place, that they will be in more finals than they're not. So just the storylines around them, you know, the fact that, you know, the Tyrone-Kerry game was such a seesaw affair, and, you know, the history of their rivalry with Kerry, and then Mayo's very recent and bitter history with Dublin, and finally getting the better of them. And even though Mayo lost the final, I still think the journey matters. That win still mattered to Mayo. It's still a win that Mayo supporters will look back on in years to come, like Donegal looked back on the 2014 semi-final win over Dublin. So to me, that week, those semi-finals were a huge highlight.
Yeah, to jog a memory, 14th of August was Mayo against Dublin. Mayo 17 points, Dublin 14 points after extra time. My two strongest memories of this day are at half-time, Dublin being 10 points to 4, up a 6-point lead. It's an unassailable Dublin lead. They'd had easy possession. They'd scored a point once where they kept the ball for what felt like 25 minutes. I'm sure it was closer to maybe 2 minutes. And I don't know who said it at half-time, but effectively an RTE said, the game's over. Like, we can all go home here. It's done. And nobody...
It was Colin O'Rourke.
It was O'Rourke, yeah. And, like, nobody threw that back in O'Rourke's face afterwards. It was a perfectly sane thing to say. So I remembered that. I remember O'Rourke... Well, I obviously don't remember it that well. I remember somebody saying, let's go, because we're done. The match is over, because everybody was saying that. And then Diarmuid O'Connor... diving through the air to keep the ball in play for a crucial score as well. I mean, so, Kieran, it's one of the great comebacks, that one.
Yeah, and the Rob Henley, you know, the retake in 45 to send it to extra time. You know, especially, you know, when you look at the backstory, Rob Henley, a really bitter, you know, he had a horrible experience against Dublin in the All-Ireland final, being sent off, the concession of a penalty, there was kick-outs coming under huge pressure. And that took a huge toll on him. Like, it wasn't easy for anybody to go through what he had to go through after that final. You know, it lingered for a couple of years. So that did look like redemption. You know, from a Mayo point of view, it's a great shame they didn't finish the deal. But, you know, there was just it just felt special watching that, though. And, you know, even the first half, like there was 20-minute spell in the first half that Dublin played the best football in the championship. It was completely forgotten now because they were under par for most of it, but they did play the best football in the championship in that period, and it will kill them that they didn't close it out. Yeah. You know, but it might be the best thing that happened to that team. It might galvanise them for another couple.
Another 5 in a row. Yeah, 6 in a row. So another abiding memory of that evening in Croke Park, I remember James Horn on the pitch and the celebrations and a real, I think, sense Mayo are going to win Sam. This is the year. It's going to happen. I mean, that was the feeling in the semi-final. They've beaten the Dubs. I mean, this is it. Fast forward, 28th of August, Kerry 22 points, Tyrone 314, which is your other choice here, Kieran. The memories I have, you can tell us why you picked this, are the impact of Colin McShane and the Tyrone defence getting on top. I think Clifford was brilliant. Wasn't David Clifford brilliant in this game? He went off injured.
Yeah, he went off injured. He was probably on the match up to
learn. And of course, Sean Kavanagh versus Pat Spillane, like the madness of this whole game.
Yeah. And, you know, and because so much had been made of the old rivalry beforehand, and, you know, Tyrone did seem to try and feed off that, the history of that rivalry, and they took the war into it, and, you know, it just threw up so much stuff about, you know, like Kerry had looked a sensation, you know, come through Munster, but, you know, it did throw up, you know, stuff about whether that's a good way to go into an All-Ireland semi-final. When, you know, Tyrone had a really hard passage. You know, it's one of the hardest won All-Irelands anybody ever won. You know, when you look at the teams they beat along the way, you know, they've beaten all the recent Ulster championships, Donegal, Monaghan and Cavan. beaten Kerry and then beaten the team who beat Dublin. So it wasn't an easy All-Ireland one. And there's just something about a Tyrone team in full flight. Like my own county would have a huge rivalry with them, and some strange days against them. But you can't but admire the doggedness and the cussedness of Tyrone, and the way they don't really care what anybody thinks about them. They are the great usurpers.
And yet, Dave, I think listening to you in the news round, you'd agree those games were amazing. They're not compensating for the overall picture men's football finds itself in for the vast majority of the summer.
No, really not. It was the Ulster Championship was interesting this year, as it always is, and I remember the closing stages of Donegal Derry. That was a fantastic watch, and Derry came so close to almost sneaking out of Ballybuffet with a draw. But there was a couple of interesting things in the semi-finals. I would disagree with Kieran. Now, I can't speak for Mayo people because I'm not from the county, but I remember thinking after that game, if they don't win the All-Ireland this year, this game is going to count for very little. And all of the excuses that people associated maybe with Dublin would be able to throw at them would then be thrown in their faces. The fact that Dublin looked like they'd lost their bite, they'd lost their spark. There was a couple of big calls that went against Dublin, that Dublin weren't nowhere close to being at their full flow, and Mayo were a bit fortunate to get through the game. I would disagree with all of that, but that is some of the talk that would have been fired in that direction if they didn't go on and win the All-Ireland. And yet again, you have Mayo dethroning the All-Ireland champions and not winning the All-Ireland, as they did in 2012, they did in 2013, they did it in 2011 when they beat Cork. Now, Mayo fans could correct me on it, but when you beat Dublin and you don't win the All-Ireland, I think it took an awful lot away from that victory. And when Kieran talks about Tyrone, and they do not care what the rest of the country thinks about them. Remember, the context of the build-up to this game was the delay in that semi-final due to the outbreak of COVID in the Tyrone camp, and they played a very calm, collected but risky game with the GAA when it came to an extension being given to them in order for this game to be played. It was absolutely right. It should have been played. Kerry themselves would not have wanted to be in an All-Ireland final, having played the game been played on paper rather than on the turf in Croke Park. But there was a lot of finger pointing in the build-up to that game, and Tyrone just put it all out of their minds and did what Tyrone have done so well going back to the early days of Mickey Hart. Okay,
so Kieran Cunningham's number 3, those All-Ireland football semi-finals. Number 3 for you, Dave, Meath ladies.
Yeah, so in a year maybe in Gaelic football where I was left overall a bit disappointed, the story of the Meath ladies was just incredible. And I was really just a bit of a bandwagon jumper late on in the season. And I would have to hand an awful lot of credit to Aisling O'Reilly, who was on most mornings on OTB AM with Ger and with Owen. And she was largely responsible for the context that she put around the journey that this Meath team had been on, where they had come from, the difficulties that Meath ladies were having it from grassroots level all the way up to the senior team. They were the ignominy of dropping down a division in terms of championship football and giving absolutely no chance to them coming into the championship. And every hurdle that was put in front of them, they just managed to find a way to get past it. And it all culminated in the final. And they looked like they've been playing All-Ireland finals at that level for a long time. And they looked like the sort of side that you would use for that old adage, you have to lose one before you win one. They looked like a side that had experience of losing an All-Ireland final and therefore had that extra bit of hunger, that bit of bite, the nous and the composure when it looked like Dublin were going to come back at them. And I just thought it was just an unbelievable story, an unbelievable journey. And the guts is one thing and the composure they showed, but the skill, a couple of moments in that final where there was just brilliant pieces of skill that saw them get over the line. It was an incredible story.
Yeah, no, it sure was. I'm going to pick up the pace here because we won't get to your 3 highlights and your low light if I keep going at this kind of a pace. Dave, you can then jump in for your number 2. Now, it's safe to say this would not have made your 3 highlights of the sporting year that was last year, or for the last, I don't know how long you've been out of love with Formula 1 for, but certainly the last probably 15, 20 years. And here we are, you've picked out the last 5 minutes, aka the abomination that was the last 5 minutes of the Formula 1 season in the Abu Dhabi race. This is number 2 on your highlights of the year.
Well, I mean, I would challenge anybody to come up with a more dramatic 5 minutes of sport in 2021 than that. I mean, it is up there with the most jaw-dropping, edge of your seat. Is this actually happening before my eyes? 5 minutes of live sport that I can ever remember watching. It just seemed, I just go back to, I remember Christian Horner was speaking live to Sky, and he said, we need the Formula One gods to shine on us over the next 40 minutes or so. In truth, we need a miracle. And what unfolded after that was miraculous. Everything that they needed to go their way went their way. And then there was the whole, scrambling online, trying to figure out what the rules were, understanding why this was happening, what decisions were being made in the background. And then you've got Toto shouting at the race director, no, Michael, no, this is not right. And then turned the takeover in the corner when Verstappen went past Hamilton and they almost touched wheels. And then Hamilton came roaring back at him, and it was just gripping. Absolutely gripping. And I don't think we'll ever see anything like that in Formula One again. It was astonishing. And when I was on the Monday with you after it on the news round, I likened it to that Aguero goal in 2012, where the entire year comes down to one moment and it leaves you absolutely speechless.
Kieran, you're number 2 for highlight of the year. Salah.
Mohamed Salah.
Mohamed Salah. The great underrated Mo Salah, I think, in many respects.
Yeah. No, but just as a theme through the 3 pieces I picked, and it might be Hakuna Matata, what Kellie Harrington was saying, kept saying in Tokyo, and no worries, because this has been such a difficult couple of years for everybody. And, there's so much to be negative and to get people down about because of what's happened around COVID and lockdown, etc. And, it was one of the things that's helped me wean me off Twitter big time that, I don't go on it anywhere near as much. It's just because the constant stream of negativity really gets to you. And the things I picked out for sport were just things to put a smile on my face. And Mohamed Salah is one of those players, like just the joy he takes in the game. You just see that big smile. And the way he's like a child in sand, he's just taken there's just an exuberance about him, and he tries things and he tries tricks, and his personal highlights reel for this season. How many sensational goals has he scored already? I don't care if he's the best player in the world or the GOAT and all this nonsense. Who cares? It's just you enjoy while he's there. I don't think Liverpool will win the Premier League. I think it's they might win the Champions League, but it's very hard to win because the 3 English teams. All 3 of the English teams there are very strong. Bayern will be tough. ESG will be tough. So he might end the season without a trophy, but that doesn't mean you can't savour what he brings. And he's sensational to watch. I love watching.
Yeah, I was on Sally Rooney buzz during the summer excavation of reading all her interviews when.
She talked about him in the Guardian. Yeah,
she did.
I read that.
Yeah, it was amazing. So you did think in the Guardian, what's on your radar? And so they ask you, film, book, and so it came to sport. And I thought she summed it up quite well. Though I have no real understanding of the mechanics of football and can only nod along helplessly at complex post-match analyses, I do enjoy watching people who are enormously good at something, enormously good. I'm not very good at reading, so I don't think she's going to enjoy this section. I do enjoy people who are enormously good at something. Actually, it's a typo. I'm forgiven. There's a typo in this, which I'm sure is not Sally Rooney's fault. But in effect, doing something that they're very good. And Liverpool's Mohamed Salah, the Premier League's top goal scorer at the time of writing, is truly spectacularly good at playing football. The ingenuity of professional footballers always impresses me, not only because of their extreme technical skill, but because of the unimaginably rapid pace at which they have to make high-pressure decisions. She concludes by saying, for me, watching Mohamed Salah play football is not unlike staring up at the stars and contemplating the vastness of the universe. It makes my own life seem nice and small. So there you go. Yeah, well. Cunningham watches Mo Salah and looks up at the stars and stays off Twitter. I mean, if that's 2021, that's not so bad.
Yeah, it's a victory. Absolutely.
Give us your sporting highlight then, Kieran, of the year 2021.
Well, if I was being perfectly honest, I'd be throwing in a lot of familiar ones that you've heard over the last few days, like Kellie Harrington, Rachel Blackwood, etc. And they were brilliant. And, Paul O'Donoghue with Pinton McCarthy and so on. What we saw at the Paralympics, Ireland beating the All Blacks. But I just wanted to go for something a little bit different. And there's something, that Hakuna Matata theme. And it was the Ireland women's hockey team before their first world game at the Olympics against South Africa. And it was a really tough road for that women's team to get to the Olympics. It meant a huge amount to them. And when Oran Naveen was played, a load of the players were burst out laughing or were smiling. They were absolutely buzzing. I've never seen any Irish team get such a buzz out of an anthem or out of being there. And they went on to beat South Africa 2-0 in the game, which made it even better. They had a mixed Olympics overall, but just that moment it just summed up, what the Olympics means to a lot of people and why it matters, even though there's a lot of reasons why it shouldn't matter.
So you're on a let's stop and smell the flowers a bit more buzz here.
Absolutely, because I could pick out so many reasons to turn off sport, but those three. I think more than ever we need a bit of joy and distraction, and so I look for that in sport a lot too now.
Yeah, like that one, Dave.
Yeah, it was a great moment, and it's a different way of looking at the sporting highlights of the year, obviously, as opposed to a massive win or a massive moment. It's I can see why Kieran has gone down that road, and it's a moment those players, they'll never forget that, and they'll be looking back on those few seconds of that video when they're a little bit older, and that when they see the smile on their faces and the way that they reacted to that moment, they'll be able to remember exactly how they felt at the time.
So 2021, Dave, you're in at number one. You've had 3 Meath ladies footballers upsetting the odds. You've had 2 last 5 minutes of the Formula 1 season. The number one highlight from the sporting year 2021.
Well, I've changed my mind in the last 60 minutes, so I have, from when I was chatting to JP a couple of hours ago before we come on tonight. The big mentions were, I was at this year's FAI Cup final. It was an astonishing occasion. Quality in the pitch probably wasn't great until extra time. There's the continued excellence of Katie Taylor, and Kieran's mentioned Kellie Harrington. I mean, that was just absolutely unbelievable. Ireland's wins over England, New Zealand. Rachel Blackmore was going to be my number one because for the sustained excellence over a 12-month period, culminating in the awards that she picked up last weekend. I remember that win on Honeysuckle in the champion hurdle, and I just thought that was a once-off. And to see her go out and become the first woman to win the jockey's title at Cheltenham was just unbelievable. And then to follow it up a fortnight later and winning the Grand National, absolutely astonishing. But I have to go back to how I felt watching Phil Mickelson win the PGA Championship. It was gripping, and for me it was up there with edge of the seat stuff in comparison with what happened in the Formula 1, because I mean, for a man of his age, 8 years after his last major, where his game was apparently at in the build-up, some of the shots he hit during it was unbelievable. The guys, sort of caliber of guys, the young guys he was holding off, him being my all-time favourite golfer, as it is anyway, and the way he closed it out. And there was one moment in particular where he spent 4 or 5 minutes with his brother, his caddy, agonising over how he should hit his shot. They talked through it, and the ball had barely left the club face. And he just turned around and he said to him, kind of like that, yeah? And he stitched it exactly where he wanted to put it. And I was on my feet going, Phil, that is why we love you.
Yeah.
And what he achieved, I don't think will ever be achieved by another golfer again, given the caliber of players who come out of college and the collegiate system in the States, the distance they hit the ball. It is no country for old men now, the way the golf game is going at the elite level. It was an astonishing 4 or 5 hours viewing. It really was. Then at the end, when they're coming down the 18th fairway, and Brooks Koepka is getting his knee dinged, and the stewards and the police seem to have lost complete control of what's happening. Just brilliant stuff.
It was, I mean, without question, it's the standout golfing moment of the year for sure. And the other thing, the lovely thing about it is it was Koepka, this all-conquering machine, playing with Mickelson. So it was real match play. Koepka would do something, Phil would respond, and there was a body language aspect, and they were looking at each other, and so it really was 4 hours of tension.
It was, yeah. You didn't want to leave the room for too long, and I normally would press pause on a major championships so then I can fast forward through some of the ads, but I didn't even want to do that in case I just missed something that had happened live. And it's one of those things that when you're watching it, you do get the feeling, I'll never see this again. I'll never see a 50-year-old do what he's doing right now, so you better soak it up and enjoy it, because it's probably a once-off. And
his game has been in the toilet, I mean, effectively either side of that all year. I mean, this always adds a kind of magical quality to what happened. I'm with you there. That'd be in my top 3 for sure. That'd be my top 3. So you've kicked out Rachel Blackmore, she's gone, and Phil Mickelson's in. There's some highlights from the year that was. Kieran Cunningham, I knew without question before I even got the word from JP outside what your lowlight of 2021 would be, and you didn't disappoint me. And I think it's a worthy thing to pick. It's an important thing to pick.
Yes, Daniel Kinnan's continued involvement in professional boxing, and I think it might have become clear in time that 2021 was a year when he actually cemented his hold on it, that his grip actually got even tighter in the sport. And then go back to the Panorama programme on BBC, which was I think it was the 30th of January, just at the end of January, and the reaction within boxing to it. And the reaction within boxing, I may be wrong, but I don't remember reading anything online from the boxers or trainers, etc., or managers who tweeted about it, or the initial reaction. I didn't see anyone praise Panorama or the report to Dara McIntyre. I saw a lot of people put the boot into Barry McGuigan, who took part in the programme and have been critical of Daniel Kinnan. And the inclination was to shoot the messenger, throwing in, another cliche, to circle the wagons. And I think a lot of people within boxing have enabled Daniel Kinnan and have to look at themselves in the mirror, but I don't think they have any willingness to do so. And that goes for a lot of the boxing media too, that have asked no questions of people who are deeply involved with this guy. And it's a sport I've loved for a long, long time, and it's really soured me on it, the way the sport has embraced this guy.
Hard to argue with any of that. Dave McIntyre, your lowlight from 2021.
Mine was the takeover of Newcastle United. I just felt depressed in the build-up to it, knowing the news was going to be confirmed. There was parts of the aftermath as well that just left me cold. Football is in a bad place in a lot of ways when it comes to the calibre of persons and companies and states that are now buying football clubs across the world, but particularly the big clubs in Europe. And it left me wondering. I mean, I followed a club from when I was 6 years old. I followed the same club my father followed, and I could understand the relief of the Newcastle fans who have had to be put through those years under Mike Ashley when they knew their club was going absolutely nowhere, a club that haven't won anything since the 1960s, and I've suffered an awful lot of agony in the meantime. And I try to put myself on their shoes. How would I feel if the club I loved and had supported since I was a boy, and I shared all the highlights and lowlights with my father, were taken over by a group representing the Saudi government? And it was very difficult for me to be overly critical of the supporters and, cheering the streets. They got rid of Mike Ashley, but at the same time, when an owner comes in with the history that they have when it comes to human rights, and it's beyond doubt, like there is no real debate over some of the stuff that has gone on, it just left me really depressed about where football has gone. And you could even make an argument about several other clubs in Europe, I know, and there's an awful lot of whataboutery when it comes to this sort of thing, and I get all of that. But at the same time, I don't think anybody really outside of Newcastle fans could have, been overly happy by the developments around that ownership and that buyout.
It's an interesting turnaround as well for a lot of us who remember our football from the 90s, because there's definitely a residual fondness for Newcastle and the fans.
Yeah, totally. It's for a while there were a lot of people's second favourite club. That Keegan side, obviously, and Peter Beardsley in the twilight of his career and the brilliance of that, and Ginola and Spria and Shearer and Ferdinand and some of the wingers they had. And it was a fantastic time to be a Newcastle fan, although they obviously didn't win anything. But it's very difficult to see where it's going to go in a positive sense unless you're a Newcastle supporter and they have all this money and they spend it well and they start to win big trophies. Yeah,
I think they're about 14 times richer than Man City's owners. Kieran, did that one bother you? Because I know plenty of people at this stage are saying, well, look, what's another oil state? What's another human rights issue? Football's long jumped the fence on that front.
Yeah, no, it definitely did bother me, though. No, that's, because across the board, Saudi Arabia in many ways is a rogue state, and it's a seriously malign influence on sport. Like the last three Formula One Grand Prix were Qatar, Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia buying, Newcastle United. Saudi Arabia with, the bids to host Tyson Fury, the Anthony Joshua, with the help of Daniel Kinnan.
Golf takeover as well.
Trying to golf takeover, and also they were the first. They are the country who pushed for the biennial World Cup first. And Gianni Infantino, the FIFA president, is very close to Saudi Arabia. So I think it's a state that's a malign influence in sport. I hope Newcastle United are relegated. I have a lot of sympathy for the supporters. They've been there a long time. But I would hate to see that club get successful with those kind of owners. Okay.
Kieran Cunningham of the Irish Daily Star. Number 3, the All-Ireland Football semi-finals. Number 2, the wonder of Mo Salah. Number 1, the Irish hockey team before the anthem with a sense of Hakuna Matata at the Olympics. Low light, Daniel Kinahan's continued influence in boxing. Dave McIntyre, number 3, Meath ladies, upsetting the odds, number 2. Last 5 minutes of the Formula 1 season. Rachel Hu, he says, even though an hour ago it was a highlight. And Phil Mickelson, in you come, PGA win at 50. And your low light, the Saudi takeover of Newcastle. Dave McIntyre, Kieran Cunningham, here's to 2022. Thanks so much, fellas. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Lads. Take care. Happy Christmas.
Off the ball on News Talk.
Make Christmas for everyone at Dunnes Stores with our Board Beer quality assured festive classics. Serve up to 6 people with our 4 kilogram fresh Irish turkey, only €20. And our mouth-watering 1.4 kilogram unsmoked Irish ham fillet, only €6. And complete your feast with our 49-cent fruits and vegetables, including melon, pineapple, Brussels sprouts, parsnips and carrots. Plus, with our €10.50 grocery voucher, you save even more. Dunnes Stores. Make Christmas for everyone. Terms and conditions apply. Voucher can be used on next grocery shop of €50 or more.
My Chemical Romance. Live at Royal Hospital Kilmainham, May 25th, subject to license.